Hi, everyone. My name is Aidan Edwards. I'm the Secretary General of the St. Lawrence Malady United Nations for the 2020-2021 school year. And I'm so thrilled to be talking to you today about resolution writing as well as the structure. And we'll also be touching on a little bit of directives. So I want to make this video as interactive and engaging as possible. So I encourage you to take the second to pause the video, grab a pen or pencil or any other writing utensil, a piece of paper, or open up a blank document on a device to make sure that when the video goes to interactive portions, you are able to engage and not have to worry about grabbing something to write with at that point. So our first interactive portion of this video, we want to do what we know, what we want to know, and what we learned, which we'll obviously do later. So I'm going to give you a couple seconds to, if you'd like to pause the video to have more time, go ahead. You are more than welcome to answer two questions. What do you think a resolution is, and what do you want to learn about resolutions? All right, so we're going to go ahead. What is a resolution paper? So it's a document written by delegates in a committee to reach a common goal. It is then adopted by the group in a vote based on the conflict within the room, and that conflict is often the topic. A solution to the problems the committee is posed with. So it's very much a solution that you all get to work towards in committee. It could be on immigration, climate change, anything that pertains directly to the events of your committee. So how are they made? So debates, as you know, are set up in two major kind of categories and subsections. So you have the moderated caucus, where everyone talks at one time. If they are to talk, everyone will talk, and they'll only talk one at a time. And they share the beliefs they want to include in their resolutions. Now, in an unmoderated caucus, groups can work together to create papers in an open forum discussion. Other just kind of open forum discussions as well. So what your goal is when it comes to writing a resolution paper, and you have to keep this in mind while you're in the entirety of the committee. Your goal during mods, which is the short for moderated, pass notes to people you want to work with so you can create them then with members of the committee during your unmods. So the unmods are a great time to work. The mods are kind of seeing who your ideas and your beliefs align with, and then you jump right in. So what goes into a resolution paper? So there are three major parts. You have the header, the preambulatory clause, and the operative clauses. So another section of our interactive part of the video, if you could, just take the moment to say what you think a header is, what a preambulatory clause is, and what an operative clause is. So I'll give you a couple seconds to do that. And if you need more time, feel free to pause the video. All right. So we're going to take some time and deep dive into each one. So we have the committee name, the topic you're discussing. It's normally the one given to you in the background guide, topic A or B, and you want to put topic A, whatever the letter is, and then what that topic is. So your sponsors, they're the delegates who write and support the resolutions. They're the ones that work together to write it, and often the ones that you will collaborate with in the UNMOD to develop it. Signatories, which are in short SIGs, are countries or parties and delegates who want to see resolution passed. So in a case, this could be countries in most situations of a GA. Crisis is sometimes a little different, but they are people who just want to support it and see it pass. They aren't the ones that wrote it, but they're the ones that support it. And finally, you have the title of the resolution at the very end of the header, which can be anything that relates to what you're trying to prove. So here's an example of a Disney Plus committee, and it has been adapted. It was from the Carl Sandburg Malady United Nations committee. And though it was a crisis, this was adapted to fit for a resolution for what you'd see in a GA. So the committee name, it was the Disney Plus committee. Your topic A, catching the hacker in Disney World. That was word for word the topic that was in the background guide. The sponsors were Hercules and Simba, the two people that wrote it. The signatories were Dory, Joy, and Hero, and the title was Operation Protection. So after your header, you have the preamble, which is just kind of what your resolution is trying to accomplish. It's the problems that the paper is trying to solve. So we must use preambulatory clauses at the beginning of each phrase and underline it. So a preambulatory clause is kind of an action word that allows the reader and the delegates to understand the intent of this. And for those of you in the St. Lawrence Malady United Nations, there is a list of clauses online on Best Delegate that's open for everyone, and on the St. Lawrence Malady United Nations Google Classroom page. So here's an example of a really straightforward preamble. It acknowledges the need to find the hacker within Disney World, and it emphasizing the utilization of a stronger cybersecurity interface within the Disney World communities of High Castle and Scarville. Now, this was a fictional committee, so we tried to use it as a fun way as possible, But so you have your two preambulatory clauses, and there are the acknowledges and emphasizes. Each clause has one of those action words at the beginning, and make sure you underline it because it allows the readers and the delegates who are going to be voting on it to understand the exact intent and direction you would like to see. So after you have the preamble, after you're saying, here's the problems that we want to solve, what do you think you're going to do? You're going to solve those problems with the operative clauses. The way I like to think of operative clauses, it is very much the problems are in the preamble, and you're going to operate, and how you're going to operate is how you're going to do it, which then derives into operative. So what are they? So the solutions to the problems discussed in the preamble, as I mentioned, they are numbered and start with operative clauses, which again can be found on Best Delegate and on the St. Lawrence Model UN Google Classroom. And they can go into subsections to further point and describe the concept beyond the operative clause. So you can have something that says something very vague, and you can go into more detail. And if you look into our example on the right side of the screen, over here where the mouse is, you have 3 points, 3 operative clauses, very set out solutions. Each starts with an underlined word, again, that is an action word. An example for this, if we look at number 2, establishes the Intermovie Special Security Task Force, okay? So that is a great proposition, but what the heck does that mean? That's why you use this. So what does it do? It A, guarantees security checks before entries to movie every morning and afternoon before and after filming. It requires all members of Disney World to carry an ID at all times for entrance verification and allows council members, which are the delegates at this point, to grant access to individuals between various movies through written consent by groups of people. Again, groups of people, it is vague. However, there was an intent behind this phrasing. And then B, promotes diversity and inclusion on the task force with various members of each community, including hero and villains alike. It includes training on diversity and inclusion in order to treat members with respect while going through movie portals. So as you can see, operative clauses really need to get down to the nitty-gritty of what you want to see changed. So they're very general in the beginning. If you'd like, you can get specific. So I'd really recommend using the subsections to make sure that it is completely understand and thorough as what your intentions are. All right, so, oh no, we have an example. I don't know why I said, oh no, I thought we were going on to the next slide, but let's look at this example as a whole. So we looked at it all. Oh no, it does look kind of scary, but guess what? We just did that in the last 3 slides. So this may seem scary, but it's just all what we did in the last 3 slides put together. So the order, header, preamble, and operative clause. And something I would like to point out is the punctuation of the operative clauses. We really didn't have a chance to highlight that back in the last slide because we didn't get to see it as a whole. But now that we see it and there's little highlights at the end of each clause, what do you notice? Take this time to write on your paper what you notice about the end of each clause and subsection. And if you need extra time, go ahead and pause the video. All right, so if you said that you see semicolons at the end of every major subsection and then a period at the very end, you are 100% right. So part of this is if you think of it as a way you were writing an essay, and this was just one big paragraph, you know? And though you do have semicolons, the semicolons are kind of like periods in a paragraph because they separate your thoughts. Semicolons do that. They act as in grammar, they act as kind of a substitute for a comma or a period. So when you go on to a next clause, you need to use a semicolon to separate your thought. But because it is still one cohesive thought in the operative clauses, you don't want to put a period until the very end. If you have any questions on this, you can go ahead and leave them in the comments or send an email to the St. Lawrence Model Unition's email or reach out to any of the officers with your questions about different punctuation and the way that this should look. All right? What do we do in a crisis? In a crisis committee, are they different? I don't know. What do you think? So let's take the next couple seconds. If you need to pause the video, go ahead and answer this question. What do you think is different, if anything, between a resolution paper in a GA versus a crisis? All right, so if you guessed that there's nothing different, there is, but it's not a bad thing because it's very similar, just a little very differences, but it's still same structure and writing techniques. So what is it? They are called directives, so they have a name change. Crazy, right? Okay. So the goal in a crisis committee is to move fast and find solutions. If you have been in a crisis before, you know it's very, very fast paced and it's very chaotic most of the time, which is completely okay. So the directives, which in this case are the resolutions, but now they're just called directives. So don't let that confuse you. They have two different names and they are a little different, but that doesn't change the value that they have. Same goal. Crisis committee is to just find a solution of this topic. So resolutions are called directives because they get right to the point. They go directly to the point. They don't do all of the crazy fluff, if that makes sense. So you have your header, and it's not there are no detailed headers. It is very much directive name, and the sponsors and signatories. That's it. In this case, there was no signatories on this, but normally there would be a couple. The reason for this is having preambulatory clauses and an elaborate header takes away from getting through the events of a crisis committee. And really the main focus should only be in the operative clauses. So you do need some sort of header, but it's not the header we know from the resolutions, just the directive name and the sponsors and SIGs. So only operative clauses, as I mentioned, need to be the strong point. So let's look at some operative clauses. Let's look at this one. So it's called Directive One World, One Government, and it's sponsored by SIMBA. In this case, there were no SIGs because this was, again, in the virtual era of Model UN. So we really weren't able to collaborate during unmods, besides when we were FaceTiming or in a breakout room. So let's read a couple of these. It's very similar, but it's very direct to the point. You don't have all the fluff. So 1, supports the complete integration of Scarville and High Castle into one Disneyland, investing in infrastructure to create a unified land that allows equal opportunities for all people, jobs, living conditions, resources. And then you see you have the nice semicolon, happens again, and then there's the period. So keep that in mind as you go through, that they are very much the same, but you don't need to do the preambulatory clauses and you don't need that elaborate header. Thank God, our crisis is averted. There's nothing crazy to worry about in a crisis. It's just a little different. Don't stress. All right, let's practice. So we are going to be doing a resolution and not a directive right now. So we're going to do some practice. So our problem: climate change is only going to get worse if we do not come up with some sort of solution. We are doomed. You only have 5 minutes to write a resolution paper, heading, preamble, and operative clauses, and put it on the Nearpod message board. In this case, we are just going to have you write it down. In the initial workshop that we did with the group all together, we did use the Nearpod message board. Right now, you can just go ahead and write it on the paper. So you have just put your name for the sponsors, just put NA for the SIGs. And remember, this is just practice. If you would like individual feedback, go ahead and send that in the email. And then that you have, there's no judgment on how good or bad. There is no bad resolution. That doesn't exist. There is just a place to improve. Everyone has a place to improve no matter what. So I'm going to ask you to pause the video for 5 minutes, write your resolution, and then we'll get some feedback and wrap it up. All right, so if you would like to participate in this practice, go ahead and pause the video for 5 minutes now. All right, I hope you all enjoyed your 5 minutes of practice. And again, if you would like any individual feedback, go ahead and email me, members of the St. Lawrence Model United Nations community. So, again, resolutions are nothing scary. They may seem scary and they may have really crazy names, but that's okay, because it's all about identifying the problem and a solution. All right. So our one last thing, we did what we know, we did what we wanted to know, but what did we learn? So I ask you to write one thing you learned about a resolution and one thing you learned about a directive.